ReZero Starting Life in Another World Volume 15 with the rare sight of a happy Beatrice on the cover. Do not be fooled, while the cover is mega cute, this volume can get very gruesome, as the fight between Elsa and Garfield is very gory, strangely descriptive, and perhaps weirdly erotic at certain points. I would never accuse the author of being a naughty boy, but they sure get into some wild stuff down in this volume. Still, Beatrice as the cover character fits perfectly, as the Beatrice storyline is the central plot point of volume 15 and perhaps even the better executed one. I'll get to that in a moment. And this is the first cover where you can argue that the cover itself spoils the volume, but the type of people that read light novels aren't really the type of people to care about spoilers anyway. And there's always these promotional arts at the beginning of the volume which tend to spoil things, so who cares? Volume 15 is the epic climax of Arc 4, and much like Arc 4, this volume is packed. It squeezes a lot of stuff into it. In the yen press release, if you count all the promotional pages, it has over 300 pages, which is more than Overlord Volume 4, which fits an entire story arc all by itself. The author covered multiple storylines in this light novel, so let's start by going through them. Much like the cover indicates, Beatrice is one of the central characters in Volume 15. To me, her storyline is the most interesting coming into Volume 15, not only because we've been following her ever since Arc 2, but also because it's the most unpredictable one. This is a bit of a meta point about the ReZero series as a whole, but by now we have all understood that usually in the final loops, the characters stretch their abilities beyond what they show in the failed loops. And this isn't necessarily a criticism, as in this type of series, spoilers, the good guys will win at some point, but the interest isn't necessarily if they will win, but how they will win. The interest of the story isn't in the fights and the conflicts themselves, but how the characters resolve them and evolve and progress as a result of it. For example, in Arc 2, you knew that eventually Subaru would be able to save the mansion. The question was how, and the resulting relationship with Rem and Beatrice was the positive outcome that came out of it. The reader is smart enough to know that this is likely the final loop for Arc 4. Not only have we been following this loop for 4 volumes now, but also by resetting it would go against the whole Bat plotline with Roswaal. So this takes away a little bit of tension from the fights, Elsa vs Garfield and Roswaal vs Rum and Puck, as good as they may be, but it adds a lot of interest to the Emilia and Beatrice storylines. The reader knows there's no going back. How is this all going to end? And I can't help but feel that at the height of narrative interest for these storylines, Emilia's storyline was very underwhelming and not quite what I was expecting. In a peculiar line by Echidna in the previous volume, she pretty much spoiled that Emilia would not fail another trial, which I don't understand why they would phrase it that way in a way that cools off the Emilia storyline, but still, I don't think she had to have failed a trial, but this felt just too easy. It felt underwhelming. For example, Subaru conquered his first trial but was broken by the second one. Here Emilia just breezed through them. This just felt not a challenge at all. I like that the trials being so easy show Emilia's growth, and I get that's kind of the point, but still the second trial was just lukewarm, not much interest, and the third one was, if anything, just a teaser for the fans, so it wasn't even very character related in my opinion. For example, in the second trial they could have played with Emilia's self-consciousness around her image more. I felt that everything was just a bit rushed and just too easy. After a stellar volume 14, I just think that Emilia's storyline did not get the payoff it deserved, or perhaps that I naively wanted, which makes Beatrice's storyline stand out even more as it's just so good. And once again, the main heroine of the series feels like the side chick. First she was overshadowed by Rem, and now she was overshadowed by Beatrice. I like Emilia, I want to really get into her character, but it's so strange to me that despite her being number 1 in Subaru's heart, she's constantly number 2 to the more interesting supporting cast. Once again, I have not read beyond Arc 4, so I'm hoping that eventually there will be an arc with some great payoff for Emilia, but for now I'm just disappointed in her as a character. Maybe it's my own expectations that were just too high, but these trials felt more like a freebie to consolidate her growth and not necessarily extra challenges to make her grow more. Am I being too harsh? Did you like the trials in volume 15? Leave it in the comments below. Anyway, now that I've already roasted Emilia, Echidna would be proud, let's actually talk about her as a character in volume 15. I like that by overcoming her past, she has become a stronger character, and I think that it's super in character that she, despite all of the vile hatred that Echidna has spewed towards her the whole time, she still thanks Echidna and wants to have tea with her. The strength of character and kindness and compassion that Emilia has is just a joy to read. Remember last video when I said that Emilia doesn't really have an intimate relationship with anyone besides Puck and Subaru? Well, here at the end of volume 15, we can see that Rum is resting in Emilia's lap, which is a nice detail that shows that even a character as arrogant as Rum now recognizes and respects Emilia more and doesn't see her as just a damsel in distress that needs to be saved, which to be fair she was mostly that in the story, but now she's grown. This whole ordeal made her a lot more blunt, which is nice seeing as she was a bit too timid before. I'm really grateful towards Subaru, but while you were gone, I was the one working hard, so I think it's only natural I would want some praise for it. To which Subaru replies, Emilia-tan suddenly got a lot more direct, huh? She grew as a character while maintaining the clumsiness and cuteness that's inherent to her character. For example, I laughed out loud when she thought that she was pregnant because of a kiss, and she was thinking that Ryuzu's mother conceived all of the clones, which she did, but not like that. Also, and I don't know if there's a mistranslation at work here, but when asked about her motivation, she says this: I want people to think I look cool, which she later explains in more detail. I get what she means, but the way she phrases things is very Emilia-like. It's very childish and very simplistic. Hidden underneath all the humor though, there's the very real fact that she thought she was going to get pregnant by kissing Subaru, and yet she was prepared to literally bear the consequences. So that is very meaningful and makes their kiss even more significant in the storyline itself. So I think that's something that will be explored in the future more, but for now their relationship is just in a place where I don't think will progress until they both get more mature. Speaking of things that will be explored in the future, Minerva, the Witch of Wrath, is strongly hinted at being Emilia's mother. I like the slow reveal. Unlike in the anime where you immediately see it's her, in the book you slowly start to think it's her by the way she's talking, and then you get confirmation. It's not outright confirmed that Minerva is Emilia's mother, but it would make a lot of sense judging from the dialogue and because they have similar personalities. They are both very kind to a fault and have a clumsy demeanor when it comes to interacting with other people. Like I said in a previous video though, if Minerva is truly Emilia's mother, then the timeline doesn't really make sense to me, but then again, elves live longer and I'm sure that will be properly explained in the future, so I'm hoping it makes sense. Overall, I can't help but like Emilia. She's the archetypal kind, positive character that just lightens up every scene that she's in. She's a lot more assertive in this volume. At one point she even tells Roswell to look at her when she's talking to her, like damn, alpha female all of a sudden. But jokes aside, she's a lot more interesting. I just would have liked that she had a better payoff for her storyline in this volume, as she was a bit overshadowed by Beatrice. Let's talk about another lady that did live up to the hype, and that was Elsa. As I said before, knowing this is likely the end of Arc 4, the reader has an impending sense of doom for Elsa, as she's very likely to lose here, and yet she's so good in every scene she's in. She's deliciously evil, she just enjoys being the villain. Her fight with Garfield is great, it's tense, it's chaotic, it's full of action, and it has this erotic vibe somehow. Like, the acts being performed here are not sexy at all. If you think they are, you should get yourself checked, that's just a tip here. But there's this overlying tension surrounding the whole fight, like she's in pure ecstasy the whole time. She truly lives for fighting. The fight is great, and I love that she shows a tiny bit of humanity by trying to save Meili. It shows that while she is the villain, she is not just a mindless monster. I love Elsa, and I loved her illustration page. It perfectly encapsulates the character and what she's going through in this volume. It almost makes up for the crappy cover she got in volume 12. Almost. The only thing I didn't like about Elsa in this volume, and once I thought about it, was the exact same problem we had in volume 9, which is after Elsa has the picture-perfect standoff, just perfect from a narrative, story standpoint, everything, she comes back as a zombie to haunt Subaru. Just why? It's the exact same thing that happened with Betelgeuse in volume 9, and it makes zero sense to me. What is it with the author in making these characters come back after he has already given them the perfect ending? I just don't get it. Thankfully in the anime this was removed, but in the light novel it's just silly. I won't reiterate the same criticisms I gave in volume 9, but it's pretty much the same situation. In my opinion, it adds nothing. If anything, it just detracts from the great storyline we had up until this point. I will say though that in volume 15 it's more egregious, because this volume is huge for light novel ReZero standards, and this is something that is very obvious that could be cut. It just adds nothing. Finally, for our lady in the cover, Beatrice, she really played hard to get, huh? And I like that. She kept rejecting Subaru until the very end. Usually these types of storylines are super cliché, with the prince in shining armor just swooping in, saving the damsel in distress, and she forgets all about her pain and anguish. Here it's much more realistic, where she's super conflicted and keeps rejecting Subaru right until the very end, where she has no choice but to make a decision. She keeps pushing him away while subconsciously showing that she doesn't want to be alone, that she wants him to come for her. Her mind, her heart, and her morals are all at conflict here, and I love it. Beatrice is technically a spirit, but her character feels very real, very human. ReZero has touched themes of depression and purposelessness before with Subaru, but here with Beatrice they approach it from another angle. Ultimately, she has a choice between staying in the fire and upholding her vow to her mother and creator, or betraying her morals but choosing to live, choosing to move on with her life. I love the switcheroo that Subaru plays on Beatrice at the end. She has all this emotional baggage that she just wants to dump on her savior. She wants someone to come in and solve all of her problems, and so Subaru switches on her. Subaru knows that he can never be that person, and Beatrice may try to fool herself, but deep down she also knows that Subaru can also never be that person. So Subaru plays on her empathy. He knows how kind and caring she is despite how apathetic she may look from way back in Arc 2. So instead of him saving her, he wants her to save him, and it's just so hilariously, and it fits the story so well at the same time. It's just genius. Subaru always says the funniest, most ridiculous thing in these dramatic moments, but it fits so well with the theme of ReZero and Subaru. He isn't the Prince Charming, the hero of legend, he's just a guy trying to help his friends and the people that he cares about. And this is the most important part: by reversing the situation, he empowers Beatrice. She made her decision. She's no longer following her mother or the Book of Wisdom or that person, whoever it may be. She is for the first time taking control of her own life. She is responsible for her own decision. This also contrasts with the main villain of Arc 4, Roswaal, who is unable to move on from his past and is dependent on the predictions from the Book of Wisdom for guidance. In a way, that is the main theme of Arc 4, to overcome your past and take control of your own life. It was an amazing ending to the Beatrice storyline, and it never fails to amaze me how Subaru can look so cool while saying the lamest things possible. I also think it's hilarious at the end where they defeat Yosagi in such dominant fashion and with such cool powers. It's revealed at the end that Beatrice and Subaru both can't use magic anymore, so they are pretty much a powerless spirit combo, which fits the theme of ReZero, and it's also like one of those video games where you get to play as the overpowered character and then you get sent all the way back to level 1, which in this case I don't think they will ever be overpowered. Beatrice and Subaru will be a very fun duo to accompany throughout the story. In the epic fight at the end with Yosagi, Emilia, Beatrice and Subaru defeat it and send it to another dimension. By sending it to another dimension, in my mind it's not truly defeated, but I have this gut feeling that Yosagi won't come back. It just seems that ReZero isn't that type of story, and if we're being completely honest, ReZero, as we said in the last few videos, has such a good cast of villains to look forward to that I don't think that Yosagi is really needed by the story anymore. At the end, we get the knighting ceremony for Subaru, which besides being a deserved and very cool accomplishment for Subaru, it's also very fan-servicey to see all of the characters in formal attire. And as you know, Volume 4 was a cringe fest for me. I had a really hard time reading that volume, so seeing him knighted after the absolute fiasco that he did in the previous knighting ceremony feels very good. I feel vindicated now. And in true ReZero fashion, just when you think that the volume is over and that things are finally calming down, we get two big reveals. The first is that Roswaal did not hire Meili, so there is another mastermind behind the scenes. And the second one is that Echidna, or should I say Omega, is back. So once again, the plot thickens. Just when you're starting to relax, ReZero grabs you by the collar once again, which they didn't really need to, as they set up a lot of cool storylines in this arc, but even then they just keep piling it on right until the very end. They just keep delivering. Overall, I'm slightly conflicted when it comes to volume 15. On one hand, I think the volume is a bit too long and there are things that could have been cut, but on the other hand, I think that Emilia's storyline felt a bit rushed and could have perhaps been better developed in order to have an equally good payoff as the Beatrice storyline. I don't know, do I want more pages? Do I want less pages? I guess they could have just structured it differently. I enjoyed this volume, although I question some of its decisions, and this brings me back to my initial critique of Arc 4, where I think that fundamentally Arc 4 just has too many storylines and too many things to juggle for both the author and the reader. From a narrative standpoint, I think it would have been easier and more concise if the author split Arc 4 into two smaller arcs, one focusing on Beatrice and the other focusing on Emilia's past. I get that the whole point of Arc 4 is for Subaru to have a battle on two fronts, I just don't think that the execution was great and I think it would have been better to split it into two. When I think of specific moments in Arc 4, Emilia overcoming her past, Rum confessing her love, Otto versus Garfield, Beatrice overcoming her vow, there are so many good moments, more than I can talk about in this video. I'm left with a very positive outlook in terms of moments from Arc 4. However, when I think of Arc 4 as an overall package, the narrative as a whole I think is a bit too convoluted, and my opinion hasn't changed after rereading it. Finally, and it is obvious by now, but my MVP of volume 15 is Beatrice. She's the heart and soul of this volume and her cover is well deserved. And bam, we are done with Arc 4, so next ReZero video we will be starting Arc 5, which I am super excited about. So I'll see you guys in the next video and bye bye.